Okay, so before we jump into the source itself, I want to just briefly make sure that we understand Dubois's perspective, right? His point of view and how that's going to shape what he's saying, especially compared to Washington's. So, as a bit of a recap, and if you're at this point, then congratulations, you're going to get some free answers. Dubois was born in the North. He wasn't a slave, and he actually was very highly educated. So his perspective as far as the treatment of black Americans is going to look very different compared to that of Washington's, who was born into slavery, had to basically learn all of these like tangible hands-on skills in order to make money. And so what they value and what they see as most important is going to look very different, right? Where Du Bois found his success through being in academics, right? Being in school and learning and like lots of thought and big ideas. Washington had a different perspective where he was able to rise from his position by learning skills in the trade and working. Now, what we're going to address here in this document itself is Du Bois kind of calling out Washington for his view and what he values. So, as always, you have some loop questions at the top. There will be a space for you to answer these at the bottom. So, what does Du Bois believe African Americans need to move forward in the South? And then, how does he define the higher aims of life? Why does he argue that manly self respect is worth more than land or houses? And that's kind of the core of this, right? Why does he argue that self respect is worth more than material goods, right? Houses, land, money, all that. So, as you go through, just to give the overview before I jump into like doing some of the work, you'll see we have readings. The reading has been chunked, so it's just this one source. It's really only what like 4 paragraphs, but after each paragraph, I give you a couple questions to try to make this as friendly as possible. Really, just like break it down, do one part at a time, answer some questions. So, as always, my first recommendation is if we haven't already read the CHQ, this is framing everything that we do, right? So hopefully this should be familiar. Why does he argue that Washington's approach will undermine progress? So why does he believe that by focusing on just money and by learning trades and skills is actually bad in the long run for black Americans? Using that as our frame, we go back up. We kind of already have an answer for this. So who's he making his argument against? Well, we see Mr. Washington represents in Negro thought the old attitude of submission and adjustment. So if we didn't get it from the CHQ, that first sentence even tells us right there. He is arguing against Booker T. Washington. Okay. Boom. One down. Does Du Bois think that giving up social and political rights will help them achieve equality? Now, if you're starting to make the connection of what he's saying compared to Booker, you should already start to like have an idea. But if we're not sure, that's fine. We keep going. But adjustment is such a peculiar time to make his program unique. This is an age of unusual economic development, and Mr. Washington's program naturally takes on an economic cast, becoming a gospel of work and money to such an extent as apparently almost completely to overshadow the higher aims of life. Mr. Washington's program practically accepts the alleged inferiority of the Negro races. Now, there's a lot of vocabulary in there. As I had already told you once, and I'm going to show you once again, if you are confused about a word, you can find. So if we want inferiority, I can highlight it, right, by taking my mouse, drag it all the way across, or I can just double click on it. I right click, and then I can look up define. And we can see the condition of being lower in status. So he's making the argument that Washington's program accepts that black Americans are less than, which Du Bois disagrees with, right? His whole point is that the accepting of money in exchange for like self-respect is not a trade worth making. Right? We can see that up here, becoming a gospel of work and money that it completely overshadows the higher aim. So that higher aim being like being on equal footing. And so he's like, okay, we can sacrifice some money and sacrifice some goods, but we all have self-respect and we can like be treated on an equal plane. Whereas Booker's like, well, if we have all the stuff we need, then the stuff will come, like the respect and political standing and social stuff will come later. We just need to be able to survive. There's an argument for both. What you're looking for is, well, why do they disagree? But I'm running out of time. As you can see the timer going off. Good luck.